These bodybuilders from the silver era all shared a secret that helped shape their physiques, something that wasn't just genetics, but the result of deliberate training. And today, it's almost completely forgotten. Notice the incredibly deep vacuums in these classic side chest poses. But more importantly, look at the rib cages pushed forward to an almost freakish extent. This extraordinary look was produced by something called ribcage expansion training. Now, your first reaction might be to dismiss this as pure bro science. There's no way a bodybuilder can actually train to enlarge his ribcage, right? But what if I told you that ribcage expansion is not only real, but that it may help explain how silver era lifters packed on more overall size than earlier bodybuilders? And this lost method is still relevant for naturals looking to build a classic physique today. But before we get into the details of the exercises, we need a quick look inside the body. The ribcage isn't just bone. Your ribs connect to the sternum through costal cartilage, a flexible tissue that allows your chest to expand every time you breathe. There's actually a surprising amount of it, as you can see in this picture. Between the ribs, you also have intercostal muscles, which actively help expand and contract the ribcage. Now, to be clear, we're not talking about growing new ribs or lengthening bones. But what can change is the mobility of that cartilage and the strength of the muscles that move the ribcage. Swimmers offer a great real-world example of this mechanism in action, a sport which, especially if started from a young age, is known to increase lung capacity. It strengthens the intercostal muscles and improves the flexibility of the costal cartilage. Over time, this allows the chest to expand further during breathing, and eventually that larger ribcage becomes visible even at rest. So if swimmers can achieve this through deep, repeated breathing in the water, it makes sense that bodybuilders figured out how to chase that same adaptation in the gym. And here's exactly how they did it. The two cornerstone exercises of silver era ribcage expansion were the breathing squat and the breathing pullover. The breathing squat was typically performed for 20 reps, with a challenging but manageable weight. The key wasn't the load, it was the breathing. Between every rep, the lifter would take 5 or more extremely deep breaths. During the first reps of the long set, this feels quite easy and controlled. But as the legs fatigue, oxygen demand skyrockets. At a certain point, the breathing becomes involuntary, and the depth of those breaths is no longer limited by comfort. Those maximally deep breaths taken under the compressive load of a barbell on the back are what begin to stress and expand the ribcage. And then, without rest, you'd move straight into breathing pullovers. The idea was simple. While the ribcage was already activated and fatigued, you'd place it under an extreme stretch. The pullover was done with lighter weight than usual, elbows slightly bent, and with the breathing synced directly to the movement. You inhale as deeply as possible while lowering the weight, and exhale as you bring it back up, usually for 12 to 15 reps, focusing entirely on the stretch and the breathing, not just moving the weight. This superset of breathing squats into breathing pullovers was the foundation of silver era rib cage training, and the results are obvious. Honestly, I find these old school side chest poses to be way more impressive than the modern version. Today's pose often looks like someone is almost crunching themselves into a stiff little ball. But somehow, even with much less muscle and higher body fat, the silver era guys looked superhuman as they confidently presented this pose with the vacuum and the crazy ribcage development. Pay attention to the position of the sternum relative to the chin. If we draw a line on the modern poses, the ribcage sits almost directly under the head. But in the old school version, the sternum is pushed forward dramatically, like a foot in front of their faces. Spinal arching is also a part of the presentation. It creates this insane visual where the pecs appear almost horizontal on top of the ribcage as if it were a shelf. The best example of this is silver era bodybuilder Mel Williamson casually balancing a glass on his upper chest. I bet you've never seen anything like that before. I'm gonna call this the male equivalent of the Kim Kardashian photo with the champagne glass. Yeah, that one. But this wasn't only about aesthetics. Just like with swimmers, greater ribcage expansion and mobility allow the lungs to reach larger volumes more easily. For bodybuilders, that means less breathing limitation during training, better oxygen delivery, improved recovery, and ultimately a higher capacity to tolerate hard work. And when you think about it, hypertrophy is usually limited by how hard you can train and how well you can recover. Steroids are one way people try to push past those limits, and of course ribcage expansion isn't even comparable to that, but the underlying idea is similar, improving the body's machinery so it can handle more work and get closer to its natural ceiling. So if this video sparked your interest and you want to go deeper, I highly recommend checking out Golden Era Bookworm's playlist. It's the best resource on YouTube for old school ribcage expansion protocols with far more detail and exercise variations than I could cover here. The channel's creator, Carlos, has also spent years teaching these methods to clients with impressive results, and I want to thank him for his help with this video.